Hi, this is Nishtha from Scholar Strategy, and this is the second part of our mini course on MBA planning. Don't forget to check out the part 1 of this course, in which we discussed how you should decide whether MBA is right for you or not. And today we are going to talk about where should you do an MBA from, India or abroad. So keep watching. So let's evaluate the question, MBA from India or MBA from US or Europe. And we are going to take 5 factors into consideration. First is the tests. Second is the ROI. Third is the learning opportunities. Fourth is the placements and career opportunities. And fifth is issues like visa and opportunities to settle. Coming to the tests, obviously CAT is ridiculously competitive. Roughly 1.9 lakh people wrote CAT this year, and only 3,000 to 5,000 will make it to IIMs. So the competition of cracking a top school in an exam like CAT is extremely slim. On the other hand, for MBAs abroad and even courses like ISP, you need to write GRE or GMAT, which is much friendlier. You can retake it many times, even during the year, and you can use the best scores possible. Test is not the only determinant of whether you get admitted or not. So test-wise, if you're freaking out, then GMAT, GRE can be much friendlier. Now let's talk about the ROI, and here we will look into the cost of doing the MBA and of course the salaries. So coming to the cost, obviously the MBAs abroad can be an expensive affair. Expect to spend anywhere around 1 CR for a course in US or Europe. And in India, the fees can vary from, let's say, 20 lakh. For example, IIM Ahmedabad is around 23 lakh. And it can go high to like 40-50 lakh for private colleges. If we talk about the salaries in US can be pretty stellar. You start with at least 100k plus salaries, which is again like 70 lakh 1 CR, and you see a pretty good growth. So 5 years down after your MBA, you should be easily expecting a salary of around $250,000 plus per year. They say that most of the MBA grads are unemployable. Only 7% of MBAs graduate from India get decent jobs. Others are just earning like 10,000 per month, which is an awful news. I do feel the salary growth and the raises that you can get in US, and including the bonuses and all, do exceed the salary growth that we have seen in India. Talking about the learning opportunities, I myself studied at NYU in US. My MBA cohort was, we were 5 people in there, and there were 2 Americans coming from different industries, one from banking, one from consulting. There was a Chinese American guy from accounting, and there was an Italian guy coming from finance. And I was coming from the tech industry. So the cohorts there are extremely diverse, not just in terms of which geographical location you're coming from. So obviously people are from different countries, but also from different industries. Have a lot of peer learning from your interactions with the classmates. This is obviously something massively lacking in Indian MBA. Expect 90% of your class to be engineering students on a younger side, not with significant work experience. In terms of professors, I got to learn under legendary professors like Damodran and Silber, who taught at NYU, and many top business schools in US and Europe, they have like Nobel laureates teaching there, and most of the professors are someone who have like run their own businesses, who are consulting to big companies. So they're very hands-on, as opposed to in India, some professors in top schools are good, but most of the faculty is not going to be as experienced or expert as you can find abroad. Now let's talk about placements, and the major differentiator I see between these 2 categories is that obviously if you're studying from a school in US and Europe, then the maximum placements happen in North America and Europe Union. Whereas if you look at Indian B schools, the top countries for the post MBA placements, you'll see 85% are still Indian placements, 10 to 12% are maybe Dubai, Singapore and other Asian locations, and only 3 to 5% would be like in North America or Europe. So that is a major differentiator. Apart from that, obviously if you go to a good school in US and Europe, then all the top companies, banks, management consulting companies like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, top banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, etc. would be recruiting from these places. They would be coming to the campuses. In India, as I said, most of the placements will be geared towards their Indian offices. If you go to IIMs, yes, some of those top recruiters would come, but for most of the private colleges and other colleges, the placements are not as sturdy. The biggest downside of doing an MBA abroad is obviously the work sponsorship, the visa sponsorship, and ability to get PR, all that hassle. And especially in post-pandemic times, we are seeing US has been a little unfriendlier, and people are having trouble getting their H1Bs sometimes. And green card takes a long time in US. So if you want to really work and settle abroad, then while US schools give you that opportunities, but there is some stress and uncertainty because of the visa situation there. And of course, if you graduate from India, then there is no visa situation or hassle to worry about, because you are in India, you don't need any other support. You can live and work freely here. Where do you want to settle and how big of a factor that is for you? And this is also the reason some people have started looking at countries like Canada and Australia. Now, if you had asked me this question 3 years ago or 2 years ago, that what country is best for doing an MBA, my answer would have been that I still think US and Europe are the places to be if you want to build a stellar post-MBA career, because the kind of salaries, the kind of opportunities with top companies, top tech companies, top banks is unparalleled. If you want to work with those guys, you still want to graduate from a school in US and Europe. But the equation has slightly changed. My answer to this question has changed after pandemic, after 2022. The main reason for why my answer has changed is because India is not what it was 3 years ago. The Indian startup ecosystem has boomed like anything. We have crossed 100 unicorns, and we saw an inflow of $43 billion in startup funding in 2021 alone. Now that's a massive number, and this makes India the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, just behind US and China. And it's already ahead of countries like UK. Now what this means for you? What this means is there's this massive amount of capital flowing in Indian startups and Indian companies, and there is obviously an expectation to deploy this capital to sustain that kind of growth. So all these startups are looking to hire people, and suddenly the demand for talent has shot through the roof. And there is so much demand for this human resources created right now that it's not fulfillable by top schools alone. So if you employ every single person in IIMs, then also you cannot fulfill this supply demand gap. You need more people. So that demand is going to flow down to tier 2 and even tier 3 MBA schools. So every sector is going to boom, and your chances of getting placed has just gone much higher than what it was 2 to 3 years ago. And because of that reason, I think suddenly the ROI equation has changed. When I'm seeing this kind of growth, this kind of opportunity in India, and by shelling much lower fee in Indian B schools, if I'm getting these kind of opportunities, then should I still look at spending big amount for a foreign MBA and deal with the uncertainty of work visas later on? Because maybe I don't get H1B and I have to return after 3 years. Also, working with big companies has been the dream for many people, but there are tremendous opportunities opening up in startups. And what I'm seeing is many of these startups, when they grow big, when they IPO or they get a successful exit, then a lot of their MBAs are generating massive amount of wealth. That is the kind of opportunity. And if you want to leverage that opportunity and be a part of this Indian startup growth story, then you can do a MBA from a normal college and hustle to make the most of this opportunity. So that's why I feel the overall equation has changed, and you should think about this question before you decide. Of course, MBA from abroad has many advantages that we already talked about. That is the kind of opportunities with big companies if you want to get, that is still more feasible if you do an MBA from abroad. So the questions that I want you to ask yourself before deciding where to do an MBA from, the first question is, do I want to work or settle in India or abroad? If you want to settle abroad, an MBA from abroad is still a good idea. And because frankly, from in India, your chances of getting a foreign placement is still pretty low. The second question you need to ask yourself is, am I comfortable or can I afford taking a loan of 75 lakh to finance my MBA? MBA abroad is an expensive affair, and even if you want to settle or work abroad but you cannot afford the fee or the loan will make you sleepless at night, then that might not be worth it. So think about the financial repercussions. Can you afford it? And third question I would like to ask is, do I want to go into traditional MBA industries like banking or management consulting, or am I open to leveraging the opportunities that startups has produced? Because if you're open to leveraging this opportunity and if you're flexible in kind of roles you want to go for, and you're okay with the uncertainty that a startup job brings, then it's a great time to be working with startups in India. So that was my take on whether you should do an MBA from India or abroad. Think about these 3 questions, and in the next and last part of this mini course, we are going to talk about how to build your profile for an MBA. And if you have feedback or comments for today's part, then please leave the comments below and I'll check them out. So do stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we work really hard creating these videos. So if you like it, so please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I will see you next time. Thanks.